That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The Stylist, the directorial debut of Jill Gevargizian, which will premiere courtesy of Arrow Films March 1st, 2021. It premiered at the 2020 Fantastic Film Fest and is developed from her own 2016 short film of the same name.
Oh, interesting.
And she's also a stylist, I read.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This film is about a woman named Claire. She lives in Kansas City, or it was shot in Kansas City, or both?
Both.
Okay. But do they say Kansas City in the movie?
I think there's a reference to it.
Okay. Claire is a hairstylist. She becomes infatuated. Who plays Claire?
Najarra Townsend, who is somewhat of a scream queen based on her last several roles in films like Contracted, Wolf Mother. She has a short role in Miranda July's Me and You and Everyone We Know.
Claire, thank you for that. Claire becomes obsessed with a client named Olivia, who's played by
Brea, the actress who's been around since the late 2000s. We reviewed her directorial debut, 12-Hour Shift, several months ago.
That's right.
And I think the same week she has another film that's premiering on Shudder called Lucky that played at South by Southwest.
So Claire's obsessed with Olivia, kind of like Fatal Attraction style. We got a comment saying that we should use the word culminates more. Okay. I feel like this is a fetish type thing, so I don't know how I feel about it, but I'll say culminates.
That's like entanglement.
This situation culminates with Claire doing Olivia's hair for her wedding and killing her and walking down the aisle dressed as Olivia. Like she's wearing Olivia's wedding dress and the veil. So when Charles, the groom, unveils her, he sees Claire. The end.
Yeah, that's a very kind of a truncated synopsis.
We'll break it down. So I was very excited to watch this movie after I watched like the first 30 seconds of the trailer.
I like the poster art as well.
Because I thought it was about a hairstylist who exacts revenge on terrible clients. And I'm a hairstylist. And even though I'm not a violent person and have never wanted to harm someone, I have wished that these bitches would die on the way to their appointment. So that's what I thought this movie, some, not all, some.
I was hoping it would be that for you too.
Yeah, and it wasn't. It's very different. So where should we begin? Do you want to talk about what you like about this movie?
I really liked Najarra Townsend.
Yes.
I remember seeing the poster for Contracted back in 2013, which was seemed to be everywhere. I never watched it, but I was very impressed with her look, style. It was bothering me that she reminded me. I couldn't place who she reminded me of, but maybe like a 1970s era Mink Stole, or
maybe that's what it is. I think maybe I was thinking Mink Stole,
or Mary Beth Hurt, even from in the Interiors era. But I like her performance.
What else did you like? We're talking about the things we like.
Oh, the cinematography I thought was great. And I think in the dialogue somebody brings up Kansas City, but this Kansas City skyline, lots of interiors, shots in the bar, bathrooms of certain bar venues, I thought looked fantastic. It was lensed by Robert Patrick Stern, who's done quite a bit of films and television. I saw that Mr. Stern recently lensed that Love and Hip Hop, It's a Love Thing.
Oh,
it's about to come out.
We watched that commercial many times.
Yeah. And strangely that, because one day we were kind of looking at a bunch of trailers for like black genre films, and something called Friend Request. I don't know if you recall that trailer. You'll have to look it up again. But he lends that, and I must say the quality of this is very surprising. I think it looks fantastic. I also like Brea. I think she is a fun screen presence, and I'm very appreciative of all these, over the past decade or so, a lot of femme-centric genre films, because it also reminded me of something like Proxy, or this Marina Devon film from 2009 where Sophie Marceau basically turned into Monica Bellucci's face. Like things about female identity and kind of this transmogrification per se. Yeah.
So before I go down my notes, I need to explain the plot point the glaring plot point I missed, which is the way Claire kills Olivia along with 3 other people.
Mm-hmm.
So the film, the storyline takes place over the course of about 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Claire kills 4 women by scalping them, basically.
Well, she poisons them usually first. Most of them are already dead by the time she does the
She
scalp.
kills 4 ladies, 3 of whom she scalps. 1, I think she just stabs her to death. And then 2 she drugs. But yeah, so that we see that in the trailer. The opening of the film is Claire's at her salon working late. A client shows up. This is a new client. And the woman's just sort of talking that bullshit clients talk. And Claire drugs her and scalps her. My very first note was, I can't believe she scalped this woman with a... Because she's like on a main street and the salon has a storefront. So Claire goes and grabs like a shower curtain that's not completely opaque. And kind of like in a half-assed way hangs it at the front door so no one sees what she's doing. But clearly you could see in there. And yeah, and she just scalps her.
Well, and that being the first scene, I'm like, this is a person who doesn't care about getting caught as she's killing someone at work. But more on that as we go along.
Oh, so I think it's going to be a lot of what didn't work for me. The story... Why don't you describe the issue with... Here, now you describe your issues, because you did a better job of that when we were discussing it.
Well, I think we've both been discussing, there seems to be some kind of major component missing here, and that being, and I'm not saying you have to be empathetic for serial killers, but leading us to understand what her rhyme or reason is. What happened to Claire that is making her do this? How she's selecting her victims. It's clear that she wants to be someone else.
Because she's wearing the scalped heads, the hair, she's wearing them as wigs.
Right.
So that's our first indication.
And for those who at least were privy to that she knew them ahead of time, she's kind of personifying them based on dialogue that they uttered.
So as she's wearing the wigs,
right.
She's reciting lines that these people said.
Right. But it just doesn't seem to make any sense, and maybe there's a lot left to, which I don't mind ostensibly about a film, is making us kind of piece together our own investigation as to why this woman is doing what she's doing, but there's just not enough to make sense. And where was I going with that? There's a scene where she's going to kill one of the bridesmaids of Olivia, and she sneaks into her house and she's struck by this picture she sees, and then medication she finds in the woman's cabinet, ultimately not killing her, which I was confused as to understanding why that is. And as the title indicates, and what a stylist is someone who is privy to, and there's hints of this in the dialogue, I guess, too, but she's a stranger and therefore a confidant to all these people, but never really living a life of her own, it seems. And we learn so few details about her. It just doesn't make sense why she's led to these extremes.
So our first indication Claire has maybe at the bare minimum is extremely socially awkward is we witness her interaction with the first client in the opening scene. And it's very awkward, very stiff. Even the client is sort of acting like, this bitch is strange. But when they start talking about the client's career, Claire explains I really love interacting with new people and learning new things, which is in contrast to her personality. She seems incapable of having non-awkward human interactions.
Right.
So I think that set a really awkward tone because from that point on, it's I want to understand why Claire's the way she is. We do get an understanding that her dad is not in the picture, she never knew him is what she says. And her mother, Claire's mother, died when she was 17. She lives in a nice house, and another big plot point that gets no explanation is there's a cellar at Claire's house. And in that cellar, she has sort of a shrine to all of the scalped heads. They're on wig heads, this hair. She has a vanity table with a mirror and a ring light. It definitely seems to have some organization, but it's where did this come from? How long has she been doing
chandelier. It's very ornate down
there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also all the scalps have the forehead skin flap still attached.
Well, that's her version of a lace front, but anyway. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead.
I just think there were so many entry points that would have made this seem more interesting or juicier even, since we're not led to understand why Claire is the way she is, but why she's so fixated on Olivia per se. And I think we both talked about how she probably has a sexual attraction at least to Olivia, but because we only see Olivia when she's kind of in a panic reaching out to Claire to do her hair for her upcoming wedding because the other hairdresser she had arranged for herself fell out. But if we had only seen her interactions with Olivia prior to that and were able to deduce some kind of difference between how she treats other clients and Olivia and what's so special about Olivia.
So we understand that Olivia, the client Claire's obsessed with, we understand that she's been doing her hair for some time. Mm-hmm. And we're introduced to the idea of Olivia because we see Claire receiving a text from her, like, I need your help. The person who's going to do my hair, it's not an option. I need you to do my wedding hair in 2 weeks. And initially, Claire says, no, I don't do that kind of thing. Please.
I don't do wedding hair.
Yeah, I don't do wedding. Please, give me a day to think about it. And then she agrees. Ultimately, I think the reason she hesitated was because she is in love with this woman and didn't want to see her marry off. But like you said, we don't really get a sense of her, because the second person Claire kills is the woman who owns the local coffee shop. Mm-hmm. And it's clear this woman knows Claire, is very friendly to her. And then one day Claire just waits outside of... Claire kind of plans to go in right as the coffee shop is closing. She drugs her. Mm-hmm. Claire drugs the coffee shop owner and then kills her. Mm-hmm. And that just seems so random, which is, fine. But I really wanted to understand her motivation since ultimately we don't learn why she has a shrine in her cellar. We don't know any sort of childhood trauma that would cause her. Also, this relates to my next note. The function of her scalping people and wearing their hair is weird because Claire has the best hair of everyone. Yeah. She has beautiful auburn hair. It's beautiful.
Styled wonderfully.
The women who she scalps, the first one has sort of a raggedy ass brunette bob. The coffee shop owner just has basic blonde hair. And then Olivia has the worst hair of them all. It's just terrible hair. So it made me confused, so Claire is not doing this because she wants these people's hair, because she has the best hair. And if she wants to be different, it's Claire is the person who would be able to make her hair look different. Mm-hmm. So I'm very confused why she's wearing this hair. And if it's because she's doing it because she wants to be closer to these people, it doesn't quite make sense to me because the first person was random. And the way this woman was talking to Claire, it seemed like she wasn't a very good person. Because this first client talks about how she's she kind of cheats on her husband because she travels for work. Mm-hmm. And she's not necessarily kind to Claire. So don't understand why she would want her head. Then the coffee shop owner, part of me thought that maybe Claire had become had an obsession with her at some point. Because I kind of thought that's who was in when you referenced Olivia invites Claire to her bachelorette party. Mm-hmm. And one of the women is this black woman who screwed up the original hairstylist wedding situation. Mm-hmm. Claire overhears that black lady and another friend making fun of her, mm-hmm. saying why would she invite her hairstylist to her bachelorette party? When I get married, please stop me from inviting the lady who makes my cake. Mm-hmm. So that hurts Claire's feelings. So then Claire that night follows the black woman home to kill her. And like you mentioned, she stops after she sees a photograph mm-hmm. that appears to have the black woman with a blonde-haired lady. Mm-hmm. And we rewound it, we paused it, and really tried to look. Couldn't tell who that was.
Yeah, couldn't tell who that lady was. Yeah.
And then she sees a bottle of prescription pills in this woman's bathroom. And again, rewound it, paused it, couldn't see what the pills are for. But those two things freak her out enough that she leaves.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's because she felt like this woman is flawed like me, and maybe. Maybe.
Maybe.
Or, we also were wondering if maybe she had problems reconciling her sexual attraction to women per se, and so perhaps her serial killing was a responce to her repressed sexual desires, kind of like in that old tired trope of, gay
I don't
serial
mind
killers.
like doing some investigating and trying to piece things together.
No, me neither.
But in this film, it's like there's so few clues that made me understand what's happening that in the end, I just felt very dissatisfied with the story. Also, it's very dry.
It is.
I think that the actor playing Claire did a good job. And
Yes.
I really liked her look. She has a few outbursts where she gets upset, and I think she does a fine enough job. But it's just very dry.
It is dry, especially considering, what the denouement, the final scene is quite good.
Yes.
And creepy, and I like that.
At the bachelorette party, Olivia's friends are garbage, and they're doing that obligatory like ladies at the club bachelorette, like all my best bitches and blah blah blah. So that scene was a little crunchy. The music that was playing in the club was crunchy.
Yes, I think that sequence could have been much shortened, and the point of it gotten across much more quickly.
Another thing that really drove me crazy is we hear so there's a moment where Olivia gets frustrated with Claire because at the bachelorette party Olivia's drunk and she kind of confides in Claire that this marriage is not necessarily where she saw herself and her husband's not exactly who she thought she'd be with. Prior to that, Claire had witnessed her husband be kind of a dick to her, not really pay attention to her. So Claire goes to Olivia's job, at night, in the parking lot waiting for her behind her car, which freaks Olivia out. How do you even know where I work? And Claire reminds her, you told me where you worked. I remember the day you got hired. You were so excited. And Olivia's like, please don't do this. I'm stressed out at my wedding. I don't need your help. Don't do this right now. So we get a montage of sort of every morning at 6 a.m. Well, first of all, Claire's obsessively texting Olivia. Then we see her checking her phone, wanting to see if Olivia's responded back to her. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, the messages that Claire receives, we can't decipher them. The audio's weird. So it drove me crazy. I can't tell who this woman is in this picture. I can't tell what the medication is. I can't hear the voicemails.
And then it's just did I miss something? And perhaps I did, or we did. But I think tonally, I don't need it to be camp or funny, but I also wanted some point of entry where I could, get in with either Claire or her victims. And I was left yearning for this to be something like Lucky McKee's May with Angela Bettis, who is also about a lonely young woman who cuts up people to make her own friend, is a Frankenstein retelling kind of. But, that if you think back to that characterization is very well, it's an evocative portrait of a lonely woman. And I never get a sense of what exactly is Claire's loneliness here stemming from. She has her dog Pepper. She has a nice house, a nice cellar. And also, it reminded me of how another film I really loved the look of, but really didn't care much for the story, was The Love Witch from 2016, directed by Anna Biller. Just a great sense of filmmaking, but not narrative-wise.
After Claire agrees to do Olivia's hair, Olivia's excited, and of course they do a pre-trial run. So Olivia comes into the salon, Claire does her hair. Again, it's so awkward because she's saying that Claire's the best in the business. But if she's the best, why does Olivia's hair look so bad? But whatever. Claire does Olivia's hair in what she says the best, which is just whatever. Yeah, I'm not gonna keep going on about how bad her hair looks.
The glow up is.
But anyway, then Olivia invites Claire to her house that night. Let's do gal time, and I'll show you my wedding dress, and we'll drink wine. She goes there, and Claire steals one of Olivia's scarves and steals her house key. So later in the film, Olivia breaks in and starts masturbating on Olivia's bed until she hears the front door open. But so then Olivia jumps out of the second story window to get out of there. But the person who comes up to the bedroom to see they're gonna go to bed is not Olivia.
Yeah, it's one of the
I was so
bridesmaids.
confused. Why would your bridesmaid bring you home and the first thing they do is run into your bedroom?
It's the bridesmaid that I kept thinking looked like Gloria Steinem.
Oh.
I think also going back to how Najarra Townsend has by far the best hair here, and how maybe like I wanted to understand why she's scalping these women.
Yes.
Is she maybe if she'd been follically challenged. For some reason, I could think of Eyes Without a Face in this, and maybe if this had been like.
Tell the story that you would have wanted to see.
Well, I was going to say I wanted it to be like Head Without Hair, Eyes Without a Face. I kept thinking another interesting way to kind of conjure the immediacy of like beauty standards. Like if this had been a black female lead obsessed with white women and wanting to have white hair because she's been conditioned to think about white standards of beauty.
Or even less political would have been if the hairstylist is obsessed with the client, who maybe is, they're both lesbians, and she's been doing her hair and sees all the women she dates, and the women she likes look different from her, so
sure.
she's scalping these women to kind of try to look. Yeah, something interesting. This movie is not macabre, it's not funny, it's not necessarily horrific. It's somewhat gory. There are scenes where she's stabbing.
Oh yeah, they're troubling scenes, of course.
But it's very dry. I mean, it's just kind of like a low-key horror film, I guess.
Yes, and for a first film, there are a lot of things to, of course, be very proud of here. But I really wanted to understand this obsession between Claire and Olivia, and like along the lines of something like Ingrid Goes West, maybe and if it's kind of random, what in the randomness is attractive to Claire about Olivia?
The film doesn't really ramp up until Claire confronts Olivia at her job in the parking lot, and that's at like the 1 hour mark. Mm-hmm. So, the first hour, it was kind of tedious to sit through. The end, though, I think because Olivia has confronted Claire, like, leave me alone, but she still needs her to do her hair. So the wedding day, I think, was sufficiently tense.
Sure.
Like that scene where Claire shows up to the wedding, that worked. And then when we realized, as soon as I saw the bride, I'm like, this bitch killed Olivia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it worked. My final note is the actor who played Olivia's mom.
Yes. Kirk something.
That character was interesting. She seemed sedated, and it was kind of funny, actually. I wish the film would have had more of that sort of tone, like sort of oddball. And
her acting, her acting wasn't bad. It was just like her delivery was very, like she's medicated. And also the wardrobe on Najarra Townsend, I thought was pretty fantastic.
She looks great.
I mean, the colors that they put her in, these like mustard yellows and these kind of washed out greens and the purple scarf with her hair, like she's very stylish.
What would you give this film?
Unfortunately, the look of it's very good, and for a central performance that is strong despite some lacking for me in the script, I would say 2 out of 5 is fair.
Oh yeah, because I was gonna give I would give it 1.5 out of 5.
That's sure.
Sorry. Bye.
Bye.